Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. We do recommend lately try Spotify. Apple Podcasts been a little bit slow. You can use that on either Android or on Apple. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. We actually just added a new channel today. You can comment on stories that our 5RSN people write. You get host updates. You get the most heat anywhere, conversations all day long on all the channels. It is a more educated place than Twitter typically. Check it out. Link right there in the description. We even got a dedicated link there. I splurged for that one. Click on the link in the description. Go right there. Pay the $2.99. You get access to all of the different channels. Also, check out Prize Picks. That's the official fantasy sponsor of the Five Reasons Sports Network. You can find Prize Picks at prizepicks.com, the Google Play Store, or the Apple App Store. Prize Picks, again, allows you to play in the state of Florida, allows you to play up to 6 players together and across the sports spectrum. So use the code 5, F-I-V-E, and start playing Prize Picks today. And now, today's latest episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yay, five on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing rubber frauds, down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, Inspire have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
Welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick in the Five Reasons Sports. And we got our guy, Sean Rochester. You can follow him at S Rochester NBA. We've been bringing on different hosts from the Five Reasons Sports Network lately. You'll be seeing Greg back with us soon. Also, check out the episode I just did with Alex, another one I did with Adele and Eternal. Lots of episodes. We're talking about transaction stuff, what the Heat can do to improve the roster, all the different vehicles, whether it's taking a bad contract, or maybe taking a young player's contract and maybe even trading Tyler Hero to do it and kind of doing the Halliburton thing or the SGA thing. Two teams that are in the conference finals. Today, we're going to shift a little bit back to the coaching staff. And, Sean, this is one of those things that's been talked about for a little bit. Also, there's been, the swirl about the Heat possibly losing an assistant, Chris Quinn. Depending on who you believed, because there were two different reports at the time. He wasn't on Chris Haynes' original report, but then was on another report that he's advancing in the search in Phoenix. Of course, that's been basically, he's been the lead assistant. Now he actually got a promotion, been the lead assistant since Dan Craig had been, David Fizdale had been. They both moved on to other places. Of course, Fizdale became a head coach. Dan Craig initially moved out to work for Ty Lue with the Clippers. I guess, Sean, one of the things that comes up a lot, and I've made this point before, so I'm going to stand by it, or at least having made the point, is that the Heat are a very insular organization. Okay. They hire their own, which can be a really good thing for stability, understanding the quote unquote culture, and all of that. It has worked. I mean, look, we have to acknowledge, okay, as we look at 4 teams that are in the conference finals that have what was it, one finals appearance between them since 2001, since I think the Knicks don't this century. The Pacers was 2000. Of course, Minnesota does not. Oklahoma City has the Oklahoma City Seattle franchise. We have to acknowledge the Heat's success, getting to the playoffs, making the finals. I've been going back and forth with a bunch of the usual accounts on Twitter, Sean, who say, well, if you don't win a championship, it doesn't mean anything, because of how spoiled they've all gotten. So I want to acknowledge this. For the most part, the Heat way has worked. In 2008, Pat Riley literally plucked an assistant out who had been in the film room, okay, and then had been on Stan Van Gundy's staff. And a lot of people questioned that at the time. I want to say I did not. I actually wrote a column. I thought it would be a good hire. One of the very few things I've been right about. And he's still the head coach, okay? He's still the head coach, all right? After all this time, longest tenured coach in the NBA. So a lot of this stuff has worked. but there can be kind of a groupthink uh, scenario. And if you look at the Heat's recent assistants, Chris Quinn played for them, Malik Allen played for them, Anthony Carter played for them. Now he left to basically a promotion uh, in Memphis. Karan played for them. Who am I missing? I must be missing. Oh, well, Keith Askins had been an assistant. He's now a scout, obviously. It is just Wayne Ellington. They brought Wayne Ellington in. He played for them.
And even before that,
yeah.
I was going to say, even before that, Pat's guys were mainly people that had played for him or had some sort of connection to him too. Bob McAdoo, like you go through that.
Yep. Yeah. So I just ask you the general philosophy of that before we get into how it's affected the Heat. What do you think of that?
So obviously I've never coached in the NBA. I would say the best comparison I can give you as someone that coaches high school basketball, I mean, there has to be trust, right? You're bringing people in, whether it's business or it's basketball, you're bringing someone in that you align with in some way. There is a connection. You're not going to pick somebody that's completely opposite of you. I agree with you that there can be differences in thinking, and having new ideas in the room can be beneficial, but there has to be some alignment along the way, right? And, you know, I look at, like, for myself, I joined a new school this year, okay, that I coach with. I coach in the Philadelphia Catholic League, one of the best leagues in the country, to be honest with you, for basketball. We had 9,000 people at our championship game, more than like 22 Division I men's college championships for their conferences. I didn't have all the same alignment as my coaching staff, and they were successful way before me with state championships. They'll be way successful after me too. So it's one is like, is the coaching staff willing to even give the voice to this person? And this is where I kind of came up with the idea of this episode, is like, what does this hypothetical coaching staff, this assistant, look like? Like, is it a veteran guy? Are you looking for like a Jeff Van Gundy? Or are you looking for a new guy that's coming out of college, coming out of Europe, coming somewhere? Not that we're going to go through this episode and come up with a top 10 list of assistant coaches. That's future episodes for the summertime, I guess. But like, what are we looking for, and what do they bring to the table that can complement what is an already good staff, if that makes sense?
I got you. And another guy I should have mentioned, Juwan Howard, of course, came right off the court onto the coaching staff and ascended, obviously, before he went to Michigan. You mentioned Jeff Van Gundy because it's an interesting example, because he got a lot of praise this year for his work on Ty Lue's staff. A lot of that praise came from Kawhi Leonard, actually. And I think, did Lue play for Jeff? I can't even remember. Would he have? I don't know. Jeff, well, not New York,
so.
right?
I
Not in
mean,
Houston. So I don't even know what the connection was there. But but there was, look, again, adding a high-profile person, former head coach, to the staff, presenting new ideas, and apparently it went very well. It's a very strong staff that the Clippers have, at least by names. There have been other circumstances where coaches, and this happens in the NFL a lot, or coaches are added to staffs and they're not aligned, and then there's power struggles and all that kind of stuff. There's not going to be a power struggle in Miami. I don't think you or I is asking for it. I've never asked for it. Eric Spoelstra is the head coach. That's the way it should be. But Eric also has expanded his horizons over the years, whether it was visiting the Chip Kellys of the world, visiting with Mike McDaniel. He's gone to the football coaches, that kind of stuff. I mean, he came up with, obviously a lot of the video coordinators, people who are in his space. The people he knows and associates with are different than, say, the one Pat knows.
Sure.
And Pat's associations, a lot of them are guys like Pop, Rick Adelman, others along those lines, Rick Carlisle, etc. I guess the reason I've introduced this is they're a little stalemated offensively. Okay. And if you go back 10, well, you got to go back. I can't believe how long ago this was. If you go back like 14 years ago, right, where Spo kind of introduced pace and space, right, changed the way they played with Bosch, changed the way they did everything in the fast break. Some of it was forced by injury, Bosch's injury in the playoffs, which got the way he played a little differently. He's made changes to his coaching staff since that got a little bit away from Pat's people. As we know, he got more control of his coaching staff, more of a developmental staff, more of a tie-in with Sioux Falls. But the offensive results have not been there the last 3 years, right? I mean, we've both acknowledged that. Now, we both acknowledge there's also not been a ton of offensive talent on the team other than, offensive skill. I mean, Tyler, Jimmy at his best, pretty much there's not a whole lot beyond that. Not a ton of athleticism, not a lot of break that guy down off the dribble, don't need a screen, create out of nothing, and all of that. I guess what I'm trying to identify is, would there be any purpose to having somebody who comes from somebody else who maybe has also been in a different situation, hasn't done things the Heat way necessarily, but has done things the right way. It doesn't have to necessarily be the Heat way, and simply be someone in there to kind of not be a checks and balance to Eric. I'm not saying he needs that, but just to have him look at something a little bit differently. Do you think there's any benefit to that?
Well, for sure. And to add to your point here, looking at cleaning the glass, offensive rating, they've only been in the top 10, and we can actually dial it down to the top 7, 04-05 and 05-06. What are those 2 years? The first 2 years of who?
04-05 and 05-06. Yeah, Shaq. Yeah.
Okay.
And one of those 2 years was Stan, by the way. Right.
Yes. 10-11 all the way up to 13-14. Those 4 years, who do you have on your roster? Obviously the big three, right? And then the other one is 19-20, the first year of Jimmy. So I really think the missing piece to the offense is an elite offensive player, right?
Like
because,
KD. Basically.
And the episode. No, it's, everything else is in the 20s, in the teens. Like it's not good offenses. So it's not just the last 3 years, which has been very bad, 21, 21, 25, but historically it has not been good. If you look at the defenses, almost every year they're in the top 10. So if I'm thinking about who I'm hiring, if we were doing this on LinkedIn, hypothetically, the skill I want is I want you to be able to coach offense. Like and I always push back when we get into the talk about the offense, like the Heat's not running different sets and different actions than most NBA teams. Like they're all kind of running the same thing, but like you need talent ultimately. Like that's the number one thing. You can hire the greatest assistant coach in the world, and it's not fixing if you ran, and I don't want to say this, but if they brought last year's roster back as a whole, hire the greatest assistant coach, it's not fixing it, right? We all understand that. But we're looking for like marginal improvements, bringing in new ideas, improving on things. I do think it absolutely is the offense. And where do you find that person and what are they going to do? I mean, that's a very hard thing for us to discuss on a podcast. I haven't listened to the recent episode that you put out today, but like if you pluck somebody from Indiana, let's say.
Right.
Unless you have Halliburton, that whole system of, the quick, almost like transition game and quick decisions and not really a set offense, like it looks really pretty. We'll watch it in a couple of minutes when this game starts, but like you need that engine to make that work. It's not so much the philosophy in the sets, it's the player. So I just wonder where they would go in terms of direction with this, because it is offense for sure.
Well, when you mention Indiana, we're talking about Carlisle, who's running totally. I mean, that's a totally different look than some of the teams he had in Dallas. But again, some of that is player base. He had Dirk in Dallas,
Luka.
and Luka. And here he's got Halliburton, and he's, like you said, he's the engine of it. But he went up there deciding we're going to play pace. We're going to play with pace, and they did at the beginning. And the defense was not good enough, their own defense, to make it count. They had a lot of those 145 to 140 type games. The defense has gotten good enough, and then adding Siakam, I think, an extra place to go with the ball there has helped. But right, I mean, Carlisle has adopted. I think he's one of the more underrated coaches in the NBA. Has been for a very long time.
Sure.
Not among other coaches, but I think to the general public. But that's kind of, he won in Detroit too. I mean, he's won everywhere. But that is, I think that I understand that it should be offense. But see, like I look at it this way and I say, okay, Spo did some things during the Big Three era. And by the way, David Fizdale was there at that time, and Fizz was brought in as an offensive assistant at the time. That was more of Fizz's role with those teams. And I know Fizz fizzed out, so to speak, in other places, head coaching, Memphis, New York, etc. Kind of his role with those teams was offensive design and also communication with the Big Three, because Spo sometimes had some trouble with that. And if you talk to all three guys who were with the Big Three, they would go to Fizz, and then Fizz would go to Spo, and that's kind of the way that worked. And again, then Juwan kind of replaced Fizz in that role, and then you've had Dan Craig, you've had Quinny, and others on the staff. And again, I'm not saying any of these guys are not great assistants; they all are in their own right. It's just a question of, are you adding somebody else to this mix who's going to make a difference? So maybe let's talk about some names here on the other side of this, just to throw it out and again get you to shoot down this idea that I've had that they need at least one more voice in that room who gives them something a little bit different. Before we do, you know what you need? If you got a leak in your house, call water cleanup. Actually, do it before you get the leak in the house, because you're gonna have a leak in your house eventually, right? If you're in Fort Lauderdale, as soon as we're supposed to have rain this week, like you won't be able to go outside. Like that's how it is. Like this is so low level. As the Panthers are celebrating their second Stanley Cup, we'll all be swimming in it again. Check it out. Water Cleanup of Florida, WCUFL.com, your one-stop water and mold cleanup shop. Reach out to Michael Robert, his whole team based in Boca Raton, service the entire Tri-County area. Make sure you mention 5 reasons when you do so. It's WCUFL.com. If you've got the schmutz, they got the guts. So let me throw a name at you, okay? Spo has pulled some of his philosophies from Mike D'Antoni. He's acknowledged that in the past, okay? Is Mike doing anything these days?
I mean, I can do a quick Google search, but I don't believe so.
I don't believe so, right? He didn't get rehired. I'm saying somebody along those lines. Would you be? And again, sometimes it's personality. You never know how guys are going to click in a room. But I mean, Mike's name has come up before. I remember during the Big Three era that was mentioned a lot. Does that do anything for you? Does that kind of name bring in somebody that is completely has not worked in the Heat organization in any way?
Just to follow up, actually, he just got let go. He's been an advisor with the Pelicans, and he just got let go on April 29th. So,
there you go. Okay.
So, and we talked about Ty Lue earlier. Ty Lue's a very established coach. He doesn't need a Jeff Van Gundy. He's not like if Chris Quinn was hired as the head coach of the Suns and they did the first logical thing in the last few years, they would probably hire a very veteran coach to be around Chris Quinn, right? Spo doesn't need
That's what teams do. Right.
Yeah. But, you look at that as an example. He brought a new idea, defensive stuff. I do think like that's a name. But again, I would just say, who's the engine of the 5 seconds or less, that pacing offense? Davion Mitchell? Tyler Hero?
Right. Well, it was Chris Duhon for a little bit in New York. Isn't it 7 seconds, not 5 seconds? Did it get quicker? It was 7 seconds. Right? I think that's the name of the book. But it was Chris Duhon briefly. Yeah, I know. And then they turned it over to others. Obviously, Nash is the one who perfected it. It doesn't hurt to have a Hall of Famer. Although even that Hall of Famer didn't get off to such a good start in his career, and it was pretty good in Dallas, but then obviously it perfected it in Phoenix. It's just a name off the top of my head. I'm just trying to think of anybody like who would be aligned here. Or let's say Quinn gets the head coaching job in Phoenix, and I hope he does. He's been a great assistant here. But if he does, like, okay, so are you just promoting on the staff? Is that what you're doing? Or this time, what's the next Heat player that you're going to bring in? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think UD wants to do it. It seems like he's one of us now. You know what I mean?
I would think it'd be somebody out of the pipeline of Sioux Falls, but then that goes to your point of just internal. We're just bringing guys up, which isn't a bad thing. It's a compliment to the program that they have of being able to have guys that you can put there. But the other thing to think about, if Chris Quinn gets that job or any job, he may have a great connection with Caron Butler, and hey, you're gonna be my lead assistant, or hey, Eric Glass, why don't you come with me? Like those. And then you got
2 assistant jobs, right?
Exactly. I think, to your point about the style with like D'Antoni, and I don't know if I necessarily have a name I would throw out there, but if they could go back to the style of like that 1920 team where the ball popped, there was player movement and ball movement. I just think like we've gotten past the Jimmy thing. Jimmy's a great player. None of us will argue that, but he's a player that likes to have the ball in his hands. He likes to dictate. He likes to make decisions. And we know sometimes, we joke about he doesn't want to shoot it and he passes it too much, but like, he's a ball stopper in a lot of ways, and sometimes it's a good thing that he's a ball stopper. When they got rid of him, there was no ball stopper, right? Even Tyler, as much as we give – and actually, I'm going to take that back. There was a ball stopper. They played him a lot at the beginning of the season, and finally they took him out, and I'm not going to even say his name on the podcast. But that offense –
him lately, too.
I can't even say anything about it.
I know.
I was hoping that episode was like 8 seconds long, and you came on and said no and did a water cleanup.
You should have seen the text I got from Brady. He's like, I said to him, I said, my question was, can he be? Well, maybe we do an episode on whether Rozier can be salvaged. He says that It's going to be 2 minutes. The answer is no. Somehow
No.
we stretch it out to 26. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But no, just stylistically now you have players that can move without the ball. They're high IQ players. Like, change the offense. Whether you bring in an assistant or not, something that is going to work better to highlight the guys that when we get to August, as you're going over the summer, they're going to be there. Highlight those guys because Jimmy's not there. He's not coming back. He's not walking through that door. Now is the time to make a shift.
Well, they tried to shift last preseason. They did.
But they got caught in between
more of a modern offense. We're going to do the threes or layups and dunks thing, more layups than dunks. And Jimmy took offense to it basically on day one and called his agent and said, what are they doing here? And his agent's like, no, it'll be okay. They'll really, and then, I know how you feel about that. But I mean, the reality is they were trying to lean into the threes and layups thing, but unfortunately one of the two guys they were trying to lean into the threes with ended up shooting 29% from three, and the layups thing, he couldn't finish at the rim. So, that played into it. I wonder also, one other question I'll ask you about this. And again, this has been something that the Heat have been so good at through the years. So this season was an anomaly. And I don't know if it's because, maybe some coaches were burnt out or dealing with the Jimmy thing or any of that. Typically players improve. And this year that did not happen. Hawkins went backwards. I mean, Rozier, I don't know what to make of that one, like I said. But Jovic, some of that was not being healthy at various times, trying to find a role for him. Ware certainly did. I mean, you and I both didn't expect him to play as much as he did. So I've got to give them credit for that one. And Tyler did, but it feels at this point, and not to take anything away from the coaches, but Tyler's so motivated and understands what he has to do in a given offseason. He has a great understanding of the skill set that I don't know that I'm going to cite him. There was one point that, even though he did obviously improve greatly, there was one point Spo told me like 2 years ago that the two players who always improved the most year over year that he's ever coached were Duncan and Bam, which was interesting to me. And but I mean, I don't think either of those guys improved in any great way this year. Bam, 3-point shooting, but regressed in other ways offensively for the first 2 months of the season. So what do you think is happening there? Because that's not something, and we didn't see a young guy like the G League guys. I know you talked about this, but like they didn't really, I mean, Christopher really didn't get a shot. Isaiah Stevens didn't get a shot. I don't know if they don't like the group. Keyshawn, who I know they like, didn't get a shot. Drew Smith was the only one, and then he got hurt.
Yeah. And Pella was okay. I mean, not
Pella was okay,
spectacular, but yeah, I don't want to give them a pass necessarily because there was that dark cloud that hung over the season until he finally was sent off to Golden State, because ultimately, like, we all have to deal with stuff, right? Whether it's, basketball or real life, you got to continue to work. You got to continue to do your job.
Right.
I would like to see that as they come back in next year, if there's people that have been around, those guys you talked about that took a dip, like Jaime, Nico to a smaller extent, Duncan, if he's still here, Bam, can they rebound? Maybe not, take a leap, but like, can this summer be a good get away, get back in the gym, and now let's get back to work? Because if not, a lot of those guys are going to be finding their way out. It's going to be the end of the road for them too. And so, I think I give the staff a little bit of a pass, but also you can only use that excuse for so long, right? Like, we can't be in 2026 or 2027 and we're like, yeah, but 2 years ago, Jimmy held us hostage for 6 months. Like, no, it doesn't work anymore.
No, that's over now. I mean, I should mention Davion too. I think it's not fair of me not to mention Davion, who obviously they found an immediate fit for. But then he shot the ball better than he's ever shot in his life. And I think they deserve some credit for that. Just typically, though, there are more guys after the season, particularly in a year that they had where there seemed to be opportunities for some of these guys to come out of it saying, okay, there's this G League guy that got ready for next year. I don't know that. I mean, Keyshawn, I guess, because again, it seems like they have some commitment to him, but the others, I don't know. Josh Christopher's going to be back next year. I don't know about Isaiah Stevens. It didn't feel, and we'll see on Drew because he's got to come back from a second catastrophic injury. But anyway, all right, so let's leave it there. What do you think? What do you think they would do if Chris Quinn left? They would just promote from within, right?
I mean, I would say that's the favorite outcome. Yeah. I mean, if we're putting odds on this, and I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. You know what the reaction is going to be if that's what happens. The thing I just would say is I don't necessarily know who. I think we have identified what. You're looking for an offensive-minded guy to shake things up, and you got to find something that fits your talent. The assistant coach is not the most important thing. It's not the number one priority of this offseason. It can't be.
No.
But it can definitely help.
Yeah. I think this is, like I said, I've heard that they pretty much let Spo vacation. I don't know that it was ideal that Pat let everybody know where he was vacationing, because I'm not sure that's something Spo would have wanted. But I've heard they've just kind of let him, as Pat said, sort of clear his head, figure things out. He'll have obviously the final say on the staff. That's kind of how they work. He'll tell them who he wants and what they do and who he's comfortable with. And that has worked very well for him to be the longest tenured coach in the NBA. But it has felt, and some of it's talent, but it has felt a little stale lately. Like it's just like, and again, I know he had some moments that were uncharacteristic, like the Detroit game. He also had a game that he won with a side out of bounds play, and then so there was good, there was bad, but on the whole, I want to see. I agree with you. 1920 pre-COVID. Until the 3 weeks before COVID, when they started to fall off, they lost at home to Charlotte the night before COVID. The ball popped. Even with Jimmy. And it has not really popped a whole lot since. It did a little bit when Kyle was playing at a high level that 1 year. And as much as I criticized him, that one time it did. But I think Spo needs a little bit of offensive tweaks, and he needs a coach on the floor. They don't have a coach on the floor. They don't. That's the thing. And until you can find that guy, that's one of the reasons I think he appreciated Kyle so much, even though I downplayed a lot of it. But he needs somebody who's been in those situations and gets the ball to the right guy at the right time. Can do something like throw the ball into Bam and get out of the way, which forces him to go. They don't have that right now, and it's among the many things that they need. KD would solve some problems, but I will tell you this: KD has been part of some not very good offenses recently, also. So it's not just about one player. All right, Sean, appreciate it. Anybody else who wants to come on from my network and shoot down one of my ridiculous ideas, you can do that. Water Cleanup of Florida, WCUFL.com. Prize Picks. Use the code FIVE. Have a good one.